Welcome again, listeners, to Filmcast Without a Cause. I'm Jacob Rosdale, and Patrick Boberg, you brought a guest today.
That's right. I brought my own flesh and blood, my brother who once had his own podcast, Dan Boberg. Say hello to the Fwock fandom.
Hello, Flockers.
No,
what? You said it.
Oh, but I invited Dan on because he's a major DC Comics fan, a major Batman fan, and if you can't tell by those two little clues, we are going to talk about The Dark Knight Rises in a little bit.
Yes, but before we do, we always start our show talking about the newest news. Newest news. That's redundant, but we talk about it anyway. The Toronto International Film Festival. That's it's coming soon. Neither of us are going. I don't know, Dan, are you going?
No, I'm not. I'm not going to fly up to Toronto.
I actually put this in the lineup with the idea of testing the waters for a Kickstarter out there to see if anybody wants to send us to the Toronto International Film Festival. I just thought, it's like, wow, this list of movies, let's just run it down real quick. There's Rian Johnson's Looper. There's Terrence Malick's next film, and he just put one out a year ago. His next one is To the Wonder. There's Wachowski's new film, Cloud Atlas. Whedon's Much Ado About Nothing. Joe Wright's Anna Karenina. David Ayer, End of Watch. Noah Baumbach's next, Francis Ha. And Ben Affleck's Argo. And to put Ben Affleck on this list is pretty amazing, but just shows the turnaround in his career. But that is some heavy-hitting new films. Wouldn't you agree, Jacob?
Oh, of course. The Toronto International Film Festival, and this is going to happen in September, mid-September. It's usually the first look a lot of people get of the Oscar contenders or the best of the year films. It's where you go to track the buzz if you're a film person. Looking at this list, it's just amazing. I didn't even know Noah Baumbach had a film coming out this year. So I'm very excited about all of these and to hear whether or not they're good.
Yeah, and just looking at the list, there were others that I cut off because I didn't know the name, but I knew the actors. But I'd say, just some of these are obviously mega nerd movies that people want to see. I would put Cloud Atlas maybe in there and Looper, but Terrence Malick has 2 films in 2 years. It's pretty incredible.
I think you're shortchanging nerds out there because there's Much Ado About Nothing and Anna Karenina. So that's a whole different type of nerd that it's going to be appealing to.
Yeah, very true. Very English nerds, because the Much Ado About Nothing is the original text, so it's just modernized with the same language, which will be interesting to see.
I think most people will go to that because they're Joss Whedon fans, and he's casting a lot of people who are in his stable of actors.
Well, there's Clark Gregg, Gillian Morgus, Nathan Fillion, Spencer Treat Clark, and Ricky Lindholm, and Alex Denistoff and Amy Acker.
Nathan Fillion's probably the big name in there.
And Amy Acker was on Angel, so a lot of Whedon's stable of actors, like I said. And hopefully we'll be able to see some footage of some of these films. Looper is the opening night film, and it's coming out just 2 weeks before the premiere. So that's one I'm not too bummed about missing out on. But I would love to be the first to see a Malick film and weigh in before all the hype. Of all the film festivals, Toronto is I have mixed feelings of whether or not it would be the festival I would want to go to, because it gets these big films that you can ultimately see anyway. But but it is a great one to follow critics on Twitter about, because that's when you get really short buzz. Oh, this is good, this is bad, without getting too much into spoiler territory or whatnot.
Well, it'd also be a place to see all the mega awards films in one place.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously not all these are going to be awards films. Just looking at the 2 that we've mentioned, Cloud Atlas and Looper. But or maybe even Much Ado About Nothing. I don't know. It'd be insane if it was that good.
Are you really going to give an award to a Shakespeare film, though? Considering, it's Shakespeare.
That doesn't matter. They'll give it to any movie as long as it's good and it's portrayed in the right way. I mean, just look at Crash.
I suppose, yeah.
No,
Okay.
or rather
That's
not.
True.
We talked about Joe Wright a couple episodes ago when we talked about how we were actually disappointed that he was returning to classical literature after Hannah. He's a filmmaker who broke out on the scene really with Pride and Prejudice, and then went in, not a classic book, but Atonement is very much in that style. But I saw the trailer for Anna Karenina in front of something I saw recently, and it really looks like they're doing something different. He's doing something different with that. So that's definitely on my radar.
I would agree. I didn't know much about it prior, but I think it was before To Rome with Love, and there's just something about the whole old school Russia aspect and just the way that's portrayed that it could be something special. I'll give it a chance.
So we won't know till mid-September whether these films add up to much, but we'll talk about it, I'm sure, here on Filmcast Without a Cause. Another story I wanted to talk about, Dreamworks recently made a big purchase buying a company called Classic Media. And I had never heard of Classic Media before, but apparently over the few years this company has existed, they've just been buying characters from different sources, and now they've collected them all in a big bundle. I don't have the number in front of me, but I'm assuming DreamWorks shilled a lot of money to get these characters. We'll put the link on our website so people can see the entire list of what DreamWorks is getting in this package deal.
You can actually see a list of the characters if you click on portfolio on their website, and it will show. I'm looking at basically a laundry list of all of them.
Yeah, so am I. It's interesting though, because if they buy this list, I know that there's like a Godzilla. One of the characters under the Classic Media label is Godzilla, and there's currently, I don't think it's DreamWorks, but there's someone else that's making a Godzilla movie, and there's the Lone Ranger on here, and Voltron. If they own the comic, do they also own the live action property or like the book property? Does this mean that they'll have the rights to that Godzilla in some way?
The article I read pretty much compared it to Disney's deal with Marvel Comics, and that the characters that already had film deals made, those contracts are still going. So, but now Disney will have to pay DreamWorks a little bit of money to use the Lone Ranger going forward. So it's kind of a funny situation like that. But Bobergs, you guys are both looking at the lists. Any characters popping out at you?
Waldo, of Where's Waldo fame.
Would you want to see a Waldo movie? I mean, I'll still go to the dentist's office and look through the Waldo books, but there's no way I'm going to a Waldo movie.
Roy Rogers.
He's a living human, or not? Yeah, he was a real human being.
If they're going to make a Lone Ranger movie the right way, they could make a Roy Rogers movie really, really good. I mean, I think you and I, when we were both children, saw Masters of the Universe, and I think that's the second time I've referenced that on this podcast. But there's He-Man right there who's staring me in the face, and there's got to be a way that they could bring He-Man to the screen that's not cheese-tastic.
That's what I'm really hoping for. He was the name that I actually like. I hope DreamWorks does something with that, as well as I talked about this on a podcast, but I believe I cut it out subsequently because the segment was going long. But I talked about Brave Star a little bit, and he's on that list. He's that Native American cowboy who has the superpowers of his spirit animals. One part of this purchase that kind of excites me as well are the Harvey Comics characters, who consist of Casper, Richie Rich, and Hot Stuff. And I grew up on them. Those were the comics I started reading. And I don't care if I hope they don't make feature films, actually. But I would like to see DreamWorks make, cartoons, Saturday morning cartoons or something, to keep these characters alive for another generation, because I can see those characters fading into obscurity. Same with Archie, but I don't have the affection for Archie as I do Hot Stuff or Baby Huey.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see how they bring these characters back to life. Just looking at these, like Felix the Cat, that's somebody that, I just through my dad, I know that name, but I have absolutely no idea what the story behind the character is. So I wouldn't be surprised if they bring it back in some capacity. Otherwise, they wouldn't have bought it.
And there are some characters, we joked about this earlier with Waldo, that I didn't even realize were considered licensable characters. Roy Rogers, who was a living, breathing human being at one point. And Pat the Bunny is on the list. And Pat the Bunny is that book that's fuzzy, and you literally pat the bunny. But apparently he's a licensable character.
Lamb Chop? Now I'm just seeing characters as they come up. Lamb Chop, Lassie, Gumby.
On the nerdy side of things, this deal includes characters that were once published by Valiant Comics in the 90s. Characters like Magnus Robot Fighter, Turok Dinosaur Hunter, Dr. Solar, Man of the Atom.
Solar Man of the Atom is my favorite all-time comic. I own every issue.
Anyway, I predict within the next year or so we will hear a lot of announcements regarding these characters. Before we go on to more superhero talk, we have to briefly address what's obviously the biggest movie news story currently, biggest current news story. Of course, I'm talking about the tragic shootings in Aurora, Colorado. And there's nothing really we can add that the 24-hour news cycle doesn't have covered, but before we go on to our feature review, we wanted to say that our thoughts go out to the victims and their families.
The show has to go on, and we'll press on to our feature review for the week, the closeout of Christopher Nolan's Batman movies with his third and final Batman movie, The Dark Knight Rises.
There's a storm coming.
You sound like you're looking forward to it.
I'm adaptable.
What are you? I'm Gotham's Reckoning.
Christopher Nolan brings his Batman trilogy to an epic-sized conclusion with The Dark Knight Rises. Christian Bale resumes the cowl of the Caped Crusader, who this time faces off against the masked muffler Bane.
Why didn't you just kill me?
Your punishment must be more severe.
Do you think he's coming back?
I don't know.
The Dark Knight Rises has been a subject discussed quite often on our Young podcast. Not speculation, but rather how both of us have been trying to avoid spoilers and advertising for it. That said, it would be hypocritical of us if our review would be filled with spoilers, so this conversation may be quite brief until the very end of the show, when listeners who have seen the movie can continue to listen and we can get down and dirty with the details. But after months of anticipation, now that we've seen this movie, riddle me this, Boberg brothers. What is the better third Batman movie, The Dark Knight Rises or Batman Forever?
I don't even think it's really a debate. It's The Dark Knight Rises easily. Better villains, a consistent Batman, because you might recall that Batman Forever was the first not Michael Keaton Batman. No change in directors, a consistent creative team. The vision of what this Batman is supposed to be is staying whole from start to finish, as opposed to being handed off to someone with a completely different set of values and just mind views of what Batman is supposed to be.
You know, I would agree that this is better than Batman Forever, but they're completely different films. One is dark as can be, and the other one is Hollywood glitz to the max, and taking characters and almost going in that vein of the campy 1960s Batman show with Adam West. But at the same time, I'd say that I'm disappointed in this film, and after seeing it and going back and watching the trailers and whatnot, I can see how people got really amped up. But I don't. It's not the acting or the direction that I felt was off. That was all really, really good. It's more that it feels like to me like Prometheus without the ambition. And it has a lot of the same issues that I'm not one of the people who's enamored with The Dark Knight, and I feel like it has a lot of those same issues, only amplified. Jacob, what's your first reaction?
Well, first off, I want to thank you both for taking that question seriously when it was totally not meant to be. Obviously, I think Dark Knight Rises is a better film, but you're talking oranges to apples, like you mentioned, Pat. I am conflicted on this movie. It sounds like I'm on a different side of the coin than you. I'm not on the scarred side, but I am quite conflicted. I think there's a lot of movie there, and there's some things about it I really liked, but nothing in it that I truly love. Let's think about what we can talk about without spoiling too much. I think a lot of my problems will come out in the spoiler section because they're very much plot based.
Well, if you don't mind, I'll just go right in with what I think is the best thing of these entire this trilogy, and that's that.
Sure.
The masterstroke of Christopher Nolan is Bruce Wayne. I mean, the first dark Batman film not the first, but Tim Burton's Batman was a Bruce Wayne that people understood, and they showed a lot with him. But this gets into his psychosis a lot, from the first movie with Batman Begins to The Dark Knight. And in this movie, he turns into what's pretty much functioning paranoid neurotic. But then it seems when he puts the suit back on, he becomes a stable person once again. And I'd say that's what makes these movies so much better than any other Batman before it. Dan, what would you say is your number one thing that you liked most about the film?
I still like that the villain is what's driving the plot. In terms of this trilogy, in the first movie, it's all about Bruce, and yeah, you have the Scarecrow, who's really more of a throwaway villain than anything, and you have Ra's or Raz, or however you want to say it, Al Ghul. Absolutely. But it's about Batman growing into becoming Batman. And then the second movie, which is driven by the Joker, and you can see Batman rising to a challenge and trying to learn how to address it. And then he overcomes this challenge, but he's guilt wrecked, and he basically gives it up. And then I think this movie it didn't disappoint me like you guys were saying, but I'm a huge Batman fanboy. That was laid out right away. But I felt like it couldn't There was no way it was going to be able to live up to The Dark Knight. There was too much going on in The Dark Knight to just make it a perfect confluence of what you could expect from a Batman movie. It's the Joker. It's Batman at his peak. It's the death of Heath Ledger. There were so many outside things that went into making this, or that movie rather, so much more than it could be that didn't happen in this movie. The comparison I would probably make is to Return of the Jedi, where it's a good movie, but it can't live up to the bar that was set by its predecessor.
See, I don't know if I'd go that same route with living up to its predecessor. I would say that just judging what we see on the screen and the story that we're given, that there are some serious plot holes that they jump over that don't make any sense. When it comes to Joseph Gordon-Levitt, they just jump over his revelations, and they jump over Marion Cotillard. Who is she from the even beginning? Suddenly, they're just telling us about Marion Tate. And that seems that all the things that happen to Bruce Wayne, and even when he's Batman, he makes these decisions that he would never make. And it just seems like too many things that were almost first draftish. Maybe the people around Christopher Nolan, it's written with his brother, so I don't know how much this is true, but someone didn't say, yeah, that's good, but what if we took this instead? What if we made Catwoman the main character instead of Bane or Batman or Bruce Wayne? It just seems like there were some serious misgivings to the actual story, and more just thinking these characters are going to carry the story, and for me, they didn't.
I think the characters are what worked for me in the film, because there's a lot of movie here. And there's a lot of plot and it's still packed in, even though the film is nearly 3 hours long, that it becomes like a Jenga board a little bit. For the most part, I think I was able to forgive a lot of the plot holes until the next day when I was like, F Bane and all that. I want to hear what Dan was going to say.
I wanted to say I thought that actually Bane was a very strong center to build the movie around. He had a plan. He enacted it. He's a larger-than-life character. And
Bane is the one villain or character in the movie that I think was sound from start to finish. Even when you realize everything about his past, not everything, but how he became Bane, it's the most service any character was given in this movie, and the most sound reasoning that any of them have.
Oh no! No! I felt Bane was purely a blunt instrument put into this film, and his motivations are so vague for the middle 2 hours.
He was a blunt
of the
instrument,
film.
though. That's his whole point.
Well,
that is his point, and that's why I can live with it. And we don't find out why he's a blunt instrument until later on. A lot of the movie hinges on what his motivations are, and it's so unclear what his motivations are.
Sure, but it's very similar in the fact that in the second movie, nobody knows anything about the Joker until the very end. Not even at the very end. You don't know his motivations. You just know that he's a psychopath. And in this movie, you kind of have something of an idea of what his motivations are based on his history with the first movie and, to an extent, Bruce Wayne / Batman.
But that's the whole point of Joker in that movie, is that he's a force for chaos. Bane is just as smart as Batman in theory. I don't know what his ultimate goal is. That's why in the middle 2 hours I was left cold. Near the end, I came around on him, and I think that's why I kind of need to re-see the movie. I'm very conflicted with the movie. There is a lot I like. Before I toss it back to you guys, I do want to say one thing I liked about it is that this film did a lot of work to make the three films feel cohesive, that I don't think exists in the first two films, who, other than the fact that they share characters, don't have a lot in common.
That's actually a problem I had, to cut in. They don't even mention the Joker once. They mention Harvey Dent over and over and over, and they talk about what happened 8 years ago and how Commissioner Gordon is a hero, but they don't ever mention the Joker at all. And I know they were going to do some CGI thing to maybe put Heath Ledger in there, and then they decided not to do that. But then they just dropped him completely. They didn't even not even a throwaway line to be like, well, he was executed 3 years ago, or
it
something
also seems
like
that if a city's going to go through three almost complete destructions within a matter of 8 or 9 years, if the Batman Begins is a year before the Joker has his way, I think they would bring that up and say, this city's back is going to break if we can't get through this, or something like that.
Oh, I would hope they wouldn't be too on the nose there.
Yeah, but it's just something that anybody would think. If I'm in Des Moines, Iowa, and suddenly we're attacked by, supervillains, where the cops are going to bring it up all the time.
I'm going to save that for the spoiler section, but I do have something to mention about that.
Well, then I guess we should move on. Any closing thoughts to send or tell people to stay home? I don't think any of us are going to tell someone to stay home, but closing thoughts on The Dark Knight Rises?
I wanted to say my biggest question mark going into the film was Anne Hathaway as Catwoman, and I felt she was probably ultimately not my favorite part of the movie. I think that'd be my boy Joseph Gordon-Levitt, but she was definitely a character I found superfluous to the plot, but very valuable to the tone of the film, because she provided probably what's the film's only comic relief throughout it. And I thought her performance was good and her physicality was good. And we'll talk more in the spoiler section, I'm sure.
I thought that they did a really good job of setting up Bane as kind of an anti-Batman. The opening scene, he pulls a stunt very similar to something Batman did in the second movie, except more difficult. He's a smart villain. He doesn't, except for one moment, but he doesn't fall into the typical stupid, no, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die, or anything like that. He also, even down to their masks, they both wear costumes, but you can see only Batman's jaw, and you can see the rest of Bane's face except for his jaw.
Oh.
I thought they did a really good job of setting up basically an evil Batman with Bane.
Well, I will save all of my thoughts for the spoiler section because I would say go see it, but it's not better than the Avengers at all. I'd say
that's apples and oranges again. But,
I know it's apples and oranges, but I'm just saying that based on expectations and how to bring a villain and several major characters to a screen, I'd say that it's not the best of the summer at this point. There's more Batman to come in both the next part of our show and the end, so if you haven't had enough, stick around. Dan's going to wow you with his Batman expertise.
Oh, God. The pressure's on.
I can't wait.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Well, let's say you don't want to see The Dark Knight Rises and you're looking for something to rent on DVD. There's a few new titles that came out this Tuesday. No major releases, but I'm going to list them off here. Silent House, which is a horror film from the directors of Open Water. It stars Elizabeth Olsen, and I believe the gimmick to this, it's all one continuous shot, more or less. But
no way.
It might cheat, but that one's on my radar. The Deep Blue Sea, which stars Rachel Weisz and Tom Hiddleston. It's an erotic thriller, not a shark movie, so I'm not interested. Jiro Dreams of Sushi is a documentary I've heard great things about. It's about an 85-year-old Japanese sushi maker who's rumored to make the best sushi in the world in this little hole-in-the-wall sushi joint in Japan. I've heard great things about it. I want to check that out.
So have I.
And Footnote, which was nominated for Best Foreign Film last year. It's a father-son drama from Israel. And Meeting Evil, which is a ridiculous-looking Luke Wilson, Sam Jackson thriller, where I think Sam Jackson plays the devil, so that might be worth it if you're a big Sam Jackson fan. It looks pretty directed. I don't know if it got a theatrical release, but it looks directed DVD from what I've seen. But here's the part of the show where we talk about things we have seen and things we want to recommend. Pat, how about you go first?
Well, first I'll start with something my brother, Dan, who happens to be on the show, emailed me the other day, right after I saw The Dark Knight Rises. There is a YouTube clip, which we will put on this show, of Batman fighting Bane with the help, if you can call it that, of 1960s Robin. Dan, what would you say about this video?
It's ridiculous and it's hilarious because the actors that do Batman and Bane, actually, the Bane guy does the Bane voice, the Batman guy does the Batman voice, and they cut in and out to their normal voices at various parts, usually when Robin shows up.
And could you just do Robin's voice for us real quick so they know what they're getting into?
You'll be ready for my flim-flam? I can't get my voice high enough to do it. The lines are along those lines.
I'll put that in the post for this show, along with another Robin, or as he's known after his Robin years, Nightwing fan film. Did any of you get a chance to watch this today?
I did.
No, I did not.
It's not good, but...
No, I was hoping you weren't recommending it.
It is a fan film, and it's related to Dark Knight Rises. It's supposed to be in the same continuity, I think. And it's not good, but you can take a look and judge for yourself.
Yeah, fan films, they're obviously labors of love, but I can't recommend that one. I'm sorry.
And real quick, this weekend is the 48-Hour Film Project in Des Moines. I have a team. Jacob was ostensibly brought onto the team, even though he is a time zone away in North Carolina. But next week, I will talk a little bit about our film and of course, post it on the site.
Dan, you're our guest. Do you have anything you want to talk about, promote at all?
Well, I want to promote probably one of the better Batman movies, which we're actually not. This is probably a little early, but I wanted to recommend Mask of the Phantasm, which is the animated movie, the actual full-on movie that they did with the animated series.
Didn't it come out on Christmas when we were kids?
Yeah, Christmas of '93 or '94, one or the other, I think. And it's really good. The animation is awesome because it was Batman the Animated Series. The story is interesting and different, and it has Batman and the Joker, so what more could you want? The animated series was always one of my favorite Batmans. I should hold off on this. And
okay, we'll get into that, yeah.
Then my other recommendation is a trailer on Vimeo, which I believe Pat said he would attach.
Yes.
To a movie called The FP.
It might be against my better judgment to attach it because it is not safe for work, children. Just a little note.
It's a Canadian movie about a place called Fraser Park, which is what the FP stands for. All I know is that characters do battle to Beat Beat, which is Dance Dance Revolution under a different name.
It is both crude, absurd, and there is minor nudity in it, so be prepared.
Yeah, it's an unrated trailer, so look out.
It's by the comedy group called The Whitest Kids You Know, so if people are IFC fans, I believe they may have seen that series before. I have only seen the trailer. It's probably all I'm going to see.
I own it. I'm going to make Matt watch it next time he's out here.
Well, this week I finally I saw Savages, a film that I've been interested in seeing for a while now. I'm not going to recommend it, but if you like the Oliver Stone of U-Turn or Natural Born Killers, in a word, excessive Oliver Stone. There's a lot of that in Savages. Not a great film, but it's definitely something that you should check out on Blu-ray because it's gorgeous. Also, because we talked about Christopher Nolan and his film The Dark Knight Rises earlier, I wanted to talk about his directorial debut Following, which is back on Netflix. It's one of those films that kind of disappears and comes back on Netflix occasionally. It's a very strong debut film, and I wanted to recommend a film that was obviously an inspiration to Following, which is Robert Bresson's Pickpocket, which I saw recently, more recently than Following. I don't even want to talk about Following that much because it's been so long since I've seen it. But Pickpocket is a French film from, I believe, 1969 that follows a pickpocket, believe it or not. And there's some great cinematography in there. It's very, I'm going to talk about Nietzsche and the Superman, not that Superman. But it borrows a lot from Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. So if you want something more thrillery, go with Following. If you want something that's kind of philosophical, go with Pickpocket. But enough talk about French, pre-French New Wave filmmakers. We're going to talk about Batman, damn it.
The summer's almost over. We will get to things that are not cape and superpower related.
I think this is the last superhero movie of the year, unless you count Dredd. But we brought Dan on board because he's a big Batman fan, right?
I am a huge Batman fan.
So we wanted to, in our special segment for this week, just talk about Batman in film and his way it's changed over time. And Batman, someone who's had a long history in the cinema. The earliest appearance I'm familiar with is the 1943 serials, which I've seen a couple of, and they're kind of funny because they're made during World War II, so from what I've read, they're quite racist. The versions I've seen that were released to DVD a few years ago cut out the racial epithets, but they're actually pretty cool. Have either of you seen these serials?
I've seen one, but it also introduced things that people just take for granted now. Like the Batcave was introduced by the serials that was filmed in a movie on the same set, and the director liked it. So he figured out a way to put it in there. But a lot of things that you just think, like Batman, of course, they're actually from this serial because it was still early enough.
They're not necessarily from the comics. These are things that were, because he was, I haven't seen the serials, but the comics, he started out as just a normal detective who wears a mask, right?
Not quite, but close enough.
Well, this is why I brought you on, Dan, to tell me that I'm wrong.
Actually, when he first was introduced, he would use guns and shoot people, so, you know.
He broke his one rule.
Yeah, well, you know, that didn't come till much later. The serials were really, it's sort of like the old Superman serials, like Kryptonite is from the Superman radio show, not from the comic. The serials are just, it's sort of the first on-screen of Batman, and it's sort of where you can see the mythology forming, as it were.
That was his first appearance on the silver screen, like you said, but he didn't make an appearance again until the 1960s.
I love the 60s show. This is actually how I got introduced to Batman.
We watched it after school together, didn't we? Didn't it used to be on like TBS or something?
Yeah, we would come home from school and we would turn it on and they would play the episodes back to back, and I think we've seen all of them. But, they had the fun characters like Egghead, who everything was excellent, or King Tut, who was an archaeologist. But the thing I love about it the most is that as a kid, I would watch it and I would take it seriously and I enjoyed it as that. And now as an adult, I can watch it again, and the sheer absurdity of the show lets me enjoy it on a completely different level.
The thing also about this show is that it did something for Batman that almost no product, maybe Spider-Man, has been able to do, and that is introduce several villains that people know outside of the comic book nerds. I mean, everybody knows the Penguin, everybody knows the Riddler, and Dan, am I wrong in thinking that the Riddler was invented for the 60s show?
He was not invented for it. He became popular. I believe he had 2 or 3 comic book appearances in the 40s, and then he got shelved. And then Frank, I want to say his last name was Gorshin. I almost said Gershwin, and that would be completely wrong. But
that'd be an awesome show.
He was actually he was a pretty big actor at the time, I believe, and so when he came on, he wanted to do the Riddler, and so they let him do it, and the rest is history.
Well, that show a lot. Even the Nolan owes a lot to that show, just because it made the product viable.
And also, we should mention the 1960s Batman movie with the immortal "Some days you can't get rid of a bomb"
and the shark repellent.
My knowledge of the 60s Batman is mostly based in the movie because we had that taped off on a VHS somewhere where the TV show to this day isn't available on home video because of rights issues, I believe, between Fox and Warner Brothers. The thing I remember about how cool the movie is, and it's still, you could blame it for this, it brought all of Batman's villains into one place. So it established the precedent of multiple villains per movie, but it's a lot more fun in the Batman movie.
Yes.
And I also remember Cesar Romero as the Joker not being willing to shave his mustache, so they just painted it over white. In the comics, Batman was this dark figure, but America at large still thought of Adam West when they thought about Batman. They thought about this guy in tights until 1989 when Tim Burton made Batman. I was really young when the first Batman came out. I was like 6, so I didn't see it in the theater. I saw the second one, but apparently it was a huge phenomenon, and the bat signal was everywhere. I remember
seeing it in the movie,
the toys,
in the movie theater, and then we had it on tape at home, and Pat and I would watch that all the time too. There was a time when Pat and I could probably quote the whole movie back and forth to each other. Our parents hated it.
I think that's the first movie I ever remember seeing on the Spanish network and thinking, wow, they turn movies in other languages. But it was a big deal. And
that film was followed up. It was a huge, massive hit. I think it was 92 is when Batman Returns came out. And that is a weird ass movie, Batman Returns. It's one of those films I use as an example for how much clout a director can get after a film is a hit. Burton didn't want to do another Batman film unless it was a Tim Burton film, and Batman Returns has evil clowns, penguins with rockets, and it amps up the weird architecture like tenfold from the first movie. It's just a crazy film. It's probably my favorite of that franchise. I'm not saying it's the best.
Some argue it is. I think it's the architecture alone for all the funhouse mirror Gotham is like, just looks like it's inside a carnival. It's really interesting on that level. And I think Penguin, as much as I love Jack Nicholson as the Joker, the Penguin is maybe the most
Jack Nicholson.
It's Jack Nicholson. I'm sorry, the most exciting representation of any of those characters, just because he went full bore as the Penguin.
That is one of the best villain performances I've seen. It is, when I rewatched all those, I didn't watch Forever and Batman and Robin, but earlier this year I watched the Burton films, and I was just kind of bummed that Danny DeVito, that's not talked about as one of the great performances of our time. It's so over the top, but he brings some actual legitimate pathos to it, and I'm a fan of that film, and I'm a fan of Nicholson.
Well, should we say that right after Batman Returns, the thing that might have pushed it into the Schumacher realm could have been the animated series, just because of its vibrancy and sometimes hilarity?
I don't think so, because the animated series actually does. The animated series came out in '93, I think, like right after Forever.
Right after Batman Returns, yeah.
It's not campy like the Schumacher films are.
But it brought in the thing that changes everything, and that is merchandising.
This is true.
And as soon as they saw that, and they saw a chance to go in a completely different way with the Batman series, which is pretty much what I think made them say, "Hey, let's get Jim Carrey. He's the hottest item in Hollywood right now." And as much I actually really like him as the Riddler, but that's what I think happened. Is they said we can make insane money on the side projects, because as everyone knows, the real money in Star Wars isn't in the films or the TV shows.
In the toys.
It's in the action figures and toys. So if all these people are like, "Ooh, I want to get the Joker, I want to get the Penguin, I want to get Iceman or the Riddler or Ra's al Ghul or I don't know, all those characters that were on the animated show and in the Schumacher films are available for purchase as a toy."
Yeah, the funny thing about the animated series and merchandising, and I don't want to get on too much of a tangent here, is that they didn't seem to make too many of the villains into action figures. They were always the short packaged. It was always Batman and then neon orange Batman and then all white Batman. True. Things Batman would never wear, and that's what annoyed me. It's even a little kid.
The other fun thing about the animated series is that it set up the voice that you hear for a lot of the characters. Despite Christian Bale's attempt at the Batman voice, I think most people probably think of animated Batman in terms of the Bruce Wayne having a different voice than Batman and how they sound when they talk. Or Mark Hamill is the Joker, just to tie it back into Star Wars again.
I wanted to echo Dan's recommendation of Mask of the Phantasm, which until Batman Begins, I was always touting as the best Batman movie, because it covers his origin in basically a realistic way, and it was darker than the cartoon. People died in Mask of the Phantasm, and there was a good mystery, and I think that's one thing that's been missing from the Batman movies up to this point is the fact that he is a great detective. But after the animated series, the high of the animated series, I would say, the films took a turn, and as Pat has hinted, it may have been monetarily driven, but Joel Schumacher made 2 sequels that are technically in the same continuity as Batman and Batman Returns. But Batman changes, that's one thing. Michael Keaton apparently turned down a dump truck of money.
Yeah, that's what he even said in an interview that I just read. And then I actually recommended, was it last week or the week before on FWONK? I can't remember, but...
last week.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on the Schumacher films, Jacob?
I haven't seen Forever in a long time. I remember as a kid loving it. There is one thing I like about Batman and Robin more than I like about Forever, and that's it has Schwarzenegger in it. And Schwarzenegger automatically makes everything at least 300 times better.
The Schwarzenegger one-liners are what make Batman and Robin watchable.
Yeah, the one-liners. It's just so many stupid parts of Batman and Robin. You can't, after you take out all the nerd anger, now that we know that good Batman movies were made after it, you can watch and laugh at, kind of like Spider-Man 3 and its flaws. They're pretty bad. They're geared more towards kids, and they pretty much ruined comic book movies for good.
Until X-Men.
Well, that would be 3 years then. But I would go to say that you can watch Forever as long as you're not watching it with the Burton movies or the Nolan movies. Maybe you can only watch it if you follow it with Batman the movie, as as the prequel to it being the sequel.
Bane, it should be noted, is in Batman and Robin.
Yes, and he's horrible. He's nothing like Bane.
Okay, and then we came to the Nolan films, and we talked about the last one earlier in the show, but I remember when I saw Batman Begins, I was convinced it was the best superhero film that had been made to that point. It still may be my favorite. I don't think it has the same reputation that The Dark Knight has at this point, but there's a fantasy and more of a comic bookiness to that film that I enjoy. That maybe that's being a geek and looking at it through rose-colored glasses instead of a film critic's glass. But I've always liked that more fantastical element of Batman Begins over the crime drama of The Dark Knight. I find them hard to compare to the Burton chronology because it's kind of like comparing 60s James Bond to the Casino Royale franchise a little bit. They're just working with different tools. Where would you guys rank the Nolan films?
I think in the Burton films, they make Batman, Bruce Wayne, out to be, it seems to be far more intelligent than he is in the Nolan movies, just based on how he's able to deduce things and do chemical analysis. He's got Lucius Fox in the new movies to do that, and massive computers. There's something about the Michael Keaton Batman that is, otherworldly, almost Tony Stark genius levels.
I talked a lot about Batman Begins. How would you rank the 3 films that Nolan made?
I will go Batman Begins number 1 as the best, and then The Dark Knight number 2, and Rises number 3, just in the exact order that they came out.
I think I would agree with that. Batman Begins, you have to start somewhere. And they did a really good job of the origin story and, figuring out how they were going to do things. The Dark Knight is kind of its own movie. I mean, you don't even need Batman Begins to watch The Dark Knight, I almost feel. I think I'd agree with you, though. I think it would go Begins, Dark Knight, and then Rises.
Well, there you have it. I guess that will do it for our Batman nerdology. And before we close out the show, we'll take one last break. And then after the end, the spoilers. Stick around.
Well, we're about to wrap up the show once again, but before we go, we wanted to talk about what's coming out in theaters. July 25th is Ruby Sparks, the latest film from the filmmakers of Little Miss Sunshine. That is followed by, on July 27th, The Watch and Step Up Revolution in wide release. And the Step Up franchise is one I'm not too familiar with. It's easy to make comparisons to the Breakin' franchise with Step Up. I saw the trailer for Step Up Revolution. Is literally the plot of Breakin' 2, Electric Boogaloo, because they are trying to save a rec center with their dancing. And also in limited release is Killer Joe, which is an interesting looking film. I kind of wish we could review that, but at this point we don't know what we're going to review. It depends on what comes to both of our neighborhoods. Beasts of the Southern Wild is something that we're interested in. Killer Joe we'd see if it was around here, but it might be The Watch. We'll be sure to tweet it. Can we do that, Pat? Do we have tweeting capabilities?
Yes, and since you mentioned that, if you would like to leave us some feedback or post a comment, tell us that something we missed about Batman, there are several ways to do that. First, there is Twitter, as Jacob said. Filmcast WOAC, that is Filmcast Without a Cause. Filmcast WOAC on Twitter. Or you can hit us up through Gmail, which is filmcastwoac@gmail.com. Write us a big long screed about why Killer Croc should have been in The Dark Knight Rises. And, of course, you can leave a comment directly on this post on the website at filmcastwithoutacause.com, all spelled out, filmcastwithoutacause.com.
All right. Well, I want to thank Pat's brother Dan for joining us.
You're welcome.
And, Pat, what are we going to do after the show?
Oh, well, this Batman talk, it can end. Somebody's got to step up to the bat and, Batman, oh my goodness. Someone has to step up and just say everything that's wrong with the end of this movie and why they cut out this continuity, and Dan's got some Killer Croc nonsense for us. So if you really want to know all there is to know about the spoilerage from this film, stick through the closing song, and there's plenty more fwalk to come. Thanks for listening.
I'll see you on the other side. Well, gentlemen, all the uncool kids who haven't seen The Dark Knight Rises yet have left, so we can finally get down and dirty, and who knows how long we'll end up talking, but there's a lot of things that we left on the table when we were talking in our review in the actual show, so let's get to it and talk some Batman.
All right. Well, if you don't mind, since a lot of people who are my close friends say I don't like movies and I tend to rip them apart and never enjoy them, I'm just going to start that right here with the parts that I hated. First off, I don't understand why Bruce Wayne would build a neutron bomb and then leave it in his basement practically and not take it apart. There's no reason for him to leave this nuclear device in the middle of Gotham all the time. Can anybody explain that to me?
I can tell you. The plot demands it, and that's why.
Oh, shit.
The nuclear bomb was the cause of one of my serious problems with the film, too, is that I wasn't sure what the actual end game was, because they establish it that the bomb is going to go off regardless. So they're not ransoming off Gotham. They've conquered Gotham because it had something to do with the ideology of Ra's al Ghul from the first movie. I take it, but it's going to blow up with Talia al Ghul and Bane in it. So
all right, do you want me to go super dork here? Because I will.
Well, I know they're eco-terrorists, but
they are in the comic. In the first movie, Ra's al Ghul talks about how that you have to make examples of cities that are excessive and horrible, And the reason that he trains Bruce Wayne is because he wants Bruce Wayne to lead the conquest of Gotham by the League of Shadows.
Yeah, because he's Gotham's favorite son, and he's going to be the perfect one to carry out their vengeance. Blah.
And in the second movie, the third movie rather, the reason they're there to do that is because Ra's al Ghul got killed by Bruce Wayne, so it's a revenge, and they're still going to level Gotham as an example to the rest of the world.
And blow themselves up while they're at it.
They're zealots.
Because Ra's al Ghul at least had the smarts to cover up his mouth from the fear gas toxin or whatever from in the first movie. But these guys don't care. They're just going to blow it up. They could have just blown it up right there. They could have done that at the very first thing.
Well, I was going to say, in the first movie, Gotham is still corrupt and horrible, and so they were going to let Gotham tear itself apart. That's what the whole neutralizing the water so that it turns into fear gas thing was about.
Yeah, well, I knew that, but I don't know. I think they kind of establish his credibility early when they say that he was too extreme for the League of Shadows. He wanted to, which makes him sound like he wants to kill everything. Obviously there was the awesome Metallica reference when Talia al Ghul says, "Kill them all," But that was another problem I had with the movie. Talia al Ghul, or Tate at the time, she gets hold of the company and all that, and then all of a sudden she sleeps with Batman. And I think it would have made a much better story point, and it made a lot more sense for Batman purposes if Bane would have showed up right then and she would have revealed herself, and that would have been a much more interesting. Cut out 45 minutes.
Wouldn't have the super
get rid of that
twist
stupid fight between Batman and Bane that made no sense, and it would explain. It would have cut out all this. Batman in this movie made very little sense with his fighting ability, his reasoning, his injuries that he gets and then immediately loses. I don't know. The character and the use of Batman didn't make much sense throughout the story.
Actually, that was one of my problems. Is he's got this knee and he's walking around with a cane, and then they put on the power brace or whatever, and apparently that healed his knee because he never walks with a cane ever again. And
well, then why doesn't Bane take that away when he goes to jail? He
it
obviously
magically
strips him down.
heals his knee, and then getting your back broken apparently. Getting a lumbar vertebra dislocated apparently puts everything else back the way it's supposed to be. It cures your laundry list of problems that the doctor tells you in the beginning of the movie.
Here's a spoil. This isn't really a spoiler thing, but it's something I forgot to mention when we were talking about it in the film. Is maybe why I didn't connect with Bane so much in his motivations is I actually did have the problem where I couldn't understand 19% of what he said. And maybe that was my fault for going to see it in IMAX where everything is super loud and where the bass is brought up to levels it shouldn't be. But when he's giving a speech, maybe he's giving his philosophy or whatever, I literally couldn't understand it. I liked the Scrooge McDuck or Sean Connery doing Santa Claus voice, and I would do my impression now, but I'll spare you. But that was one of the first complaints that came out about the movie, and I kept pushing it off. It's like, oh no, those are just angry fanboys. But it actually did affect. I didn't catch what he was saying about a random Gothamite holding the detonator or whatever until Talia said it in the payoff line.
Oh, interesting. That must have been a mix in IMAX, because I seriously thought I heard about 98% of the things that Bane said outside of times when the score might have been too loud.
During the scene with the anytime he had a megaphone, there was a serious problem hearing him or understanding him on my end. And speaking of the megaphone, I think a lot of people are going to try and talk about the politics of this film. Or what it's saying about society. I really don't think there's much there.
I agree.
I think it's mainly it's works for an action film, but if anything, it's pro-rich people because it shows the poor uprising in villainous ways, and in a way it contradicts the Joker's plot from the first movie that showed humanity actually had something good in them, the boat scene from Dark Knight. Because their society is just ready to rip the rich from their houses in this one, and be the villains.
Yeah, I think the sound thing must have just been the IMAX thing, because I had absolutely no problem understanding Bane except for when he was being silent, or soft.
You didn't understand him when he wasn't talking?
Well, yeah, it was so hard to get him. But like when he was complaining to his mooks about dragging Gordon down and he's being very quiet, that was a little hard to hear. But he was being quiet. It's supposed to be hard to hear. The thing I actually really like about Bane, and I kind of commented on this earlier though, is that he's smart. Like other than putting Batman in the prison, the inescapable prison that he knows someone can escape from, that he knows a child can escape from. Everything he does is smart. Like when they say that Gordon's dead and he has that, then show me the body, or he's perfectly willing to sacrifice underlings to get the job done. Or even at the end when Talia tells him to keep Batman alive so he can treasure the last 12 minutes, Bane's about to cap Batman in the head before Catwoman shows up. So he's smart, and I enjoyed that. I liked having a smart villain.
And I liked Tom Hardy in the role, and I can't wait to see it at home video or maybe in another theater to be able to understand everything he says. And when I would call him a blunt instrument earlier, it was sort of a complaint about the film, but it does make sense in his role in it, and it just took me a while to wrestle with that a little bit.
Yeah, well, the blunt instrument, they do kind of emasculate him at the end when it's he is foolishly, for some reason, doing this whole thing all for Talia al Ghul. I guess he's got the motivation of he protected her in prison and she came back for him.
The problem I had with the last fight is if you were Bane, you'd think you'd be really good at protecting your crippling weakness of your face mask.
Well, in the first two movies, the Batman is routinely headbutting people. I don't understand. He didn't headbutt anybody in this movie.
He and Bane traded headbutts several times.
Yeah, but I just imagine that you see this guy's got something over his mouth. I would headbutt him in that thing.
He punches him like 6 times in their first fight, and right in the face, and Bane never even takes his hand off his lapels that aren't actually there. I actually like that stance. That's one of my favorite things from the movie.
Well, that kind of talks about what I was talking about earlier. They turn him into a street brawler in this. In the first movie, he's a ninja. In the second one, he's got several wide strokes. But in this one, both of them are just
they just
what
punch
I would
each
call,
other for.
They're terrible fighters. They do nothing at all. And half of the technology that they showed existed on the Batsuit in the first two movies, with like the electric neck thing and his spikes on his arm that he basically gets the best of the Joker with, they're gone.
Actually,
and that was
the
like
last fight, I expected those to make a reappearance where he was going to eject the blades into Bane's mask to rip it to pieces. I was like, okay, here it comes, blades. No, he just punches.
Well, they could. It's the one thing that people are starting to notice about Nolan movies with the extremely close fighting action with all the henchmen standing around. If it were a wide shot, you'd see all those guys standing there with guns. Batman should understand that if he's not as strong as this guy, which everybody's telling him, and he's basically kind of a cripple, that he should work from a distance. He should use everything he has to work from a distance.
Well, someone does tell him that. Bane tells him that. You fight like a young man fights, which is actually a quote from The Dark Knight Returns.
Well, Dan, you were gonna give us some of the inside scoop, including my Killer Croc tease.
All right. Well,
what were these
while we're talking
these
about
things?
The Dark Knight Returns, you have that where in The Dark Knight Returns, Batman's actually the one that says he still fights like a young man, and that's a mistake. The two cops, when he first shows up, the old cop and the young cop, and the old cop turns to the young cop and goes, "You're in for a show," is from The Dark Knight Returns. Let's see. John Daggett is named after, do you remember from the animated series, Pat, the corrupted CEO, Roland Daggett?
Yeah, that name was very familiar, but I
the
couldn't
same
place
thing.
it.
The Gotham Rogues, their R is the Red Robin symbol. When Batman's looking at the clippings of Selina Kyle, they look like microfilm things, like when Vicky Vale goes to investigate Bruce Wayne in the Batman Tim Burton movie. Batman getting his back broken over Bane's knee is taken almost shot for shot from Nightfall.
The comic series from the 90s.
The famous comic, yeah.
Yeah, where, Batman does get his back broken. And Alfred actually resigns in Nightfall to try and snap Bruce to his senses.
Oh. It's been so long since I've read that. Oh
so that's what it feels like when Catwoman does her ninja vanish on Bruce is from Kingdom Come. There's just all sorts of just little nods there. One of my favorite, though.
It was a funny gag. I just wondered why he did it in the Batman voice.
When he's the only one there. So
Yeah.
that's what that feels like.
Yeah, you know, people said that about this film. I've been hearing that. Why does he use his Batman voice when he's standing in front of people who know him? And then when I went back the other day to watch The Dark Knight Rises, I realized he was talking with Lucius. Just him, the two of them in front of the cell phone thing that helped him map all of Gotham. And he's doing it right there. I think that would just weird me out.
It's part of the costume. Like, he puts on the costume, so he talks in that weird voice.
Yeah, that's the only way I could rationalize it. It's that he only feels stable when he's inside that character, and that's how he does it.
Oh, and then just so people know what the Killer Croc thing you were talking about, Pat, is, since I didn't actually mention that. When Gordon goes in the sewers and he sees Bane's hideout and the villains, and he tells people about it, they ask him if he saw a crocodile or an alligator. And Killer Croc lives in Gotham City's sewers. So just a little nod.
Speaking of that sewer scene, what is with the cops in Gotham sending all of the cops into the Narrows in the first movie?
It was just a training exercise. Don't you send all your forces into the...
Or whatever. And in the second movie, they all go, they drive down underground into the lower street. And then in this movie, they send the majority of the cops into the sewers. It's like, let's put all of our eggs in one basket.
The other thing, though, the obvious Robin remark, you know, you should use your real name, Robin. He actually is kind of an amalgamation of all the different Robin characters. His mother dying when he was young and his dad dying in front of him is Jason Todd, the second Robin. Him figuring out that Batman and Bruce Wayne are the same person is Tim Drake, the third Robin. And then him growing up to be a cop is what Dick Grayson, the first Robin, became when he grew up.
There you go.
Well, now that we're talking about the end, it's one thing I wanted, because that happens near the very end. It's kind of a denouement after the siege of Gotham. I do think the ending is probably the best part of the entire movie, the scenes after Talia al Ghul is defeated. And I think that's what is going to redeem the film for a lot of people. I think it ties up a lot of bows. I don't know how I feel about it as a Batman fan, because it's Batman quitting is something Batman wouldn't do in the comics. But as
well, yeah, but that's because they have to sell comics.
What?
Well, I kind of get the feeling that I could rationalize it, because in these movies, he seems to only use Batman as like a weapon of mass destruction. You know, like when he knows he's putting that suit on, he has to do something that he doesn't want to do. Like they always say, he doesn't want to be Batman forever. Mm-hmm. Harvey Dent just right out says that. So that's like, in the end, he's like, this is it. I've got to do the serious business.
Oh, I totally agree. It works in the context of the movies. I'm just saying, it's not the Batman oh gosh, that sounds so nerdy to say the Batman I know. But
yeah, well, you want him to go on and start Batman Inc. like in the comics, where there's Batmans all over the world in every major city.
The Batman of Venezuela, the Batman of Colombia.
I do like the idea, but and it's the feeling I got after Batman Begins, is that he's going to go off and he's going to have hundreds of adventures, and we're not going to see them all in the movie. But as the movie ends, Batman was only Batman for, I think he was a year between Batman and The Dark Knight. And we don't know how long he was still Batman between The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. We know 8 years passes. But,
it sounds like he hung him up pretty quick after The Dark Knight.
Yeah, so he was only really Batman for a year, and he fought 2 supervillains. So the nerd in me is kind of disappointed that he didn't have hundreds of adventures with all these characters that I could create in my mind. But in the context of the movies, if you remove all the continuity and all the stories about Batman and just watch these 3 movies, it's a fitting end, and it fits thematically, and it's a... I mean, I know, Pat, you're down on the film, but what did you think about how it ended?
Are we talking the exact end where he shows up living in?
I'm talking everything.
Wherever he was?
I'm talking everything
Italy.
From when the bomb blows up on.
Well, I kind of like where Robin or Blake, swings through, and he might either become Robin or take up Batman again, just be Batman. I do like how that might live on and all that, and there is a certain resolution to it, but it does kind of kill the franchise in a respectable manner. It ties up the loose ends. Mm-hmm. But that bomb issue, I hated that so much. It felt so impossible.
I think the scale of the film is what kept me from engaging with it a lot.
Yes, it goes over. It must have been 4 or 5 months.
And the timeline is really, you really have to. I mean, it makes a certain sense, but you really have to be paying attention to figure out that all of a sudden it jumps to 54 days. Because the only way you know is because it says it on the back of a television. And of course they can nitpick about the Bane driving halfway across the world to drop Bruce Wayne into a prison and then coming back the very next day to Gotham to offer his ultimatums or whatever.
That's just movie talk. That's just movie tempo.
Yeah. Wouldn't he be jet lagged?
Yeah, those are just that's a nitpick.
How does Bane eat? Never mind. I'm just being an idiot. I was saying, how does Bane eat with his mask?
IVs. Or, he showed that when Bruce rips his mask off, he showed that he can still control himself for a while. By the way, that's one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite scenes. I have 2 scenes that I really love in the movie. I love the Scarecrow scenes. I especially love his costume where it looks like he's got stuffing coming out of his joints like a scarecrow.
Yeah, that was pretty fun.
I thought that, and I love death by exile. I love that. And then I love how Bane is so determined to stop Batman that he's frickin' breaking cement pillars with his punches in his desperation to stop him before he gets overcome by the pain.
Oh my! That I liked most of the reveals. The Talia al Ghul reveal being probably my favorite, even though if you knew anything about the comics, you probably pieced it together pretty quickly.
Actually, before I saw the movie, I remember telling Pat I had a theory.
Oh, really?
It was everyone's theory. No offense.
Yeah, I know it was, but I stayed away from anything about this because I wanted to watch the movie, with a blank slate. So
I think a lot of people had similar theories about Joseph Gordon-Levitt, but when they revealed the characters' names, I think a lot of those theories went away. But I liked how they incorporated the mythology without being bound to it. It was more of a wink and a nod. One thing I want to speculate on, it's pure speculation. Do you think they had this story in their mind as they were working on Batman Begins and The Dark Knight? And do you think if Heath Ledger would have survived, there would have been a place for him in this film?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. I think they might not even have used Bane, and they just would have brought the Joker back.
Yeah, I don't think for a second that they had this story in mind. In fact, I think I read something with Christopher Nolan where he said he almost didn't want to do the second movie. He thought about just letting it his directorial direction end with the first one because there was 5 years between the two.
Well, I'm glad he went on and finished it, even though if there are some flaws, it probably is one of the most consistent trilogies I can think of. Definitely the most consistent superhero movie trilogy. Before we wrap up, we could probably keep talking casually for hours about this film, but were there any other thoughts you guys had before we wrap it up?
I'd say don't build a nuclear bomb and then leave it underneath the city streets. I'll probably end up seeing it a lot and be okay with it, but yeah, not. I have a feeling though that it'll loom in the same area for me personally as Iron Man 2, with too many issues to completely forgive it.
I thought it was a good ending. I didn't go in expecting an awesome movie like 1 or 2, because it's a trilogy and sequelitis is going to set in at some point or another. I ended up liking Bane a lot more than I thought I would. Like, to me, he carries the movie. He's the heavy. And I thought that Tom Hardy did a great job, especially since you can't see his face except for one scene where, he mouths the word goodbye and then gets beat to beat to a pulp, pardon my language. And so I thought that was just a great performance by Tom Hardy. I don't know if it's on the same level as Heath Ledger as the Joker, but it's probably the strongest performance in the movie.
Yeah, it's a shame they kind of rob him of all an actor's tools, take away
rob him of his face.
Yeah, take away Tom Hardy's face. So I think the problems I have with Bane have nothing to do with Tom Hardy's performance. I even liked his goofy voice.
Well, I guess I would like to thank anyone who sat through what has to be definitely our longest episode to date, and maybe our longest episode ever. We'll see, but I think that does it, right, for our Dark Knight Rises review and spoilage.
Bye-bye.
I don't think anyone's going to tell us when to leave.
Yeah, good call, Garth.
I'll bet we're just gonna sit here, and when they're finished, they'll fade to black.
I can't believe they did that.
I told ya.